Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we are diving into a concept that's really at the core of cybersecurity and how to approach it. It's called defense in depth.
Yeah.
And to help us unpack this, we're going to be looking at an article by Michael Twining.
Right.
He's a cybersecurity undergraduate at Utica University, specializing in cyber operations. He's actually graduating this May 2025.
Wow, that's coming up.
I know, right around the corner.
Yeah.
And he already has his CompTIA Security Plus and his ISC2 certified in cybersecurity credentials.
Impressive. So already has some good professional experience in the field.
Yeah, definitely knows what he's talking about, at least when it comes to these fundamental concepts like defense in depth. And
Yeah.
it's funny because he actually came to cybersecurity from kind of a different path originally,
Oh, interesting.
He had a different career before this. But anyway, we're not here to talk about Michael's career path. His article is a great way to jump into this idea of defense in depth. And, our mission today is really to get to the bottom of why it's so important to have these multiple layers of security.
Absolutely.
It's about understanding that it's not enough to just have one tool or one strategy, that there's no silver bullet.
Right.
But instead, a really well thought out combination of different safeguards can, significantly improve your protection.
Yeah. Definitely makes you feel better, too. Like, about your security in general.
It does, in the face of all these threats that seem to pop up every day.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's nice to have some peace of mind. So let's start with the basics.
Yeah.
What exactly is defense in depth?
Basically, defense in depth, as Michael talks about it, it's really just a fancy way of saying you're using a layered approach to security.
Okay.
I always like to think of it like, imagine a medieval castle.
Okay.
You would just have one big wall, right?
Right.
There'd be moats, drawbridges, multiple layers of walls, towers, archers, and the inner keep.
The whole 9 yards.
Exactly. And each one is meant to slow down, deter, or even detect an attacker, right?
Makes sense.
So cybersecurity, that's what we're trying to do. We're trying to implement these security controls in a way that even if one fails, there are others in place to protect your valuable data and systems.
Okay. Yeah, the castle analogy really makes it clear how it all fits together.
Hopefully.
So in the article, Michael outlines a few reasons why this layered approach is so important.
Right.
And the first one that really jumps out is that it reduces the likelihood of a successful attack. How does having multiple layers actually make that happen?
No, the interesting thing is each layer you add makes it exponentially harder for an attacker.
Okay.
So think about it. A lot of attacks out there, they try to exploit some kind of known software flaw.
Right. Yeah.
So that's one entry point, right?
Yeah.
That's one layer. But if that fails, maybe because you've got your software up to date,
Yeah.
they have to try something else.
Okay. Yeah.
Like maybe tricking someone into clicking a bad link in an email.
Oh, right.
But that's another layer they have to get through, right? Because now you've got human awareness and email security working together.
Yeah.
And even if, unfortunately, someone does click that link, then there's, hopefully some kind of endpoint security on their computer, which would be another layer.
Right.
And that could stop that malicious activity from spreading.
So it's almost like a domino effect.
Exactly. It's like they're running a gauntlet, and each layer is another obstacle for them.
Yeah, I get it. So it's really about creating this obstacle course for these would-be attackers.
Exactly.
So it's not just about having a checklist of tools, it's about how they all work together, creating a more, resilient security setup. Now, Michael also points out something else that I think is really important, which is that defense in depth gives you like a backup plan.
Yeah, definitely.
Like a safety net. So why is that redundancy so important, especially in the world of cybersecurity?
Well, I think the most important thing is to just acknowledge that no security is perfect.
That's a good point.
There will always be new vulnerabilities discovered. In fact, Michael even mentioned something called a zero-day vulnerability, which is basically a flaw that no one even knows about yet, not even the people who wrote the software.
Oh, wow.
And that means there's no patch for it, no way to fix it immediately.
That sounds scary.
And then you've got really sophisticated targeted attacks.
Yeah, you hear about those all the time.
Where they're specifically going after a certain organization or a specific person even.
Right.
And they're using all sorts of advanced techniques to get past the usual defenses.
So in those cases, if you've only got 1 or 2 layers of security, you're in big trouble if those fail.
Exactly. Could be a complete disaster. But with a good defense in-depth strategy, you've got those other layers standing by, ready to detect the breach, contain it, and keep the damage as small as possible
Uh,
so you don't get your whole system compromised or lose a ton of data.
right, it's damage control.
Exactly.
Instead of just trying to prevent every single attack, which is probably impossible. Pretty much, yeah.
So it's like acknowledging that there will be problems, but having a plan to deal with them when they happen. Now, the third benefit that Michael highlights is how defense in depth helps to protect against a wider range of threats, both the ones we know about and the ones that are still kind of emerging.
Right.
So can you talk a little bit about how that works, especially in the context of the constantly changing threat landscape?
Well, cyber threats, they're evolving all the time.
It seems like every day there's something new to worry about.
Absolutely. It's nonstop. New malware, new ways of attacking. So if you only have one security solution, even if it's great at handling what we know about, it might be completely useless against something brand new.
Oh, wow.
And that's where defense in depth really comes in. You've got all these different types of security controls. Some might be focused on identifying specific known threats based on patterns or signatures,
Yep.
while others might be looking at the behavior of the system, trying to spot anything unusual that could be a sign of a brand new unknown threat. So it's kind of like having a team of specialists, all with different skills.
Yeah, exactly. And when you combine all these approaches, it creates a much stronger defense, even against stuff we haven't even imagined yet.
Yeah, it's almost like future-proofing your security to some extent.
To some extent, yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So we've got a good handle on why defense in depth is so important. It reduces the chances of an attack being successful, it provides a backup plan, and it protects against all these different kinds of threats, both known and unknown.
Right.
But now let's talk about how we actually put this into practice.
Okay.
Michael's article lays out 3 key ways to do it. And the first one is to, actually implement multiple layers of security.
Yeah.
So what does that look like, practically speaking, in a real-world scenario?
Well, it's all about strategically using a bunch of different security measures. So first you've got the basics, right? Like firewalls. They act as the gatekeepers, controlling what traffic comes in and goes out of your network.
It's like the bouncer at a club, right? It's checking IDs and only letting the right people in.
Yeah, so think of your data packets as people, and the firewall is making sure only the ones with the right credentials get in.
Okay, that's a great analogy.
Then you've got your antivirus software, which is there to catch and remove malicious software, things like viruses and worms, from individual computers.
Right.
And intrusion detection systems are like your security alarms for your network, always watching for suspicious activity, even if it looks like legitimate traffic at first.
Okay, so that's a good starting point.
Right, but it doesn't stop there. You can also use strong access controls,
Okay.
so that only the people who should be accessing certain resources can actually get to them.
Right.
And encryption is really important too because it scrambles your data. So even if someone intercepts it, they can't read it without the key.
So it's like a secret code.
Exactly.
All right.
And then you've got multi-factor authentication, which is like an extra layer of security on top of your password.
Right.
So you might have to enter a code from your phone or something, which makes it way harder for someone to get in, even if they steal your password.
So it's all about having a mix of different types of defenses that all work together to create a strong overall shield.
Exactly. It's about covering all the angles, not just relying on one type of tool.
The second tip from Michael's article is to stay up to date. Now, that sounds pretty obvious, but I imagine it's actually quite a lot of work.
It is. It definitely takes effort, but it's absolutely crucial.
Okay.
Because the threat landscape, it's constantly changing. New things are popping up all the time.
Yeah.
So you can't just set your defenses and forget about them.
So what does staying up to date actually involve?
Well, for one thing, regularly patching your software is super important.
Okay.
Software vendors are always releasing updates to fix vulnerabilities. So if you don't apply those patches, you're basically leaving the door open for attackers.
Right.
And security protocols and best practices, those change all the time too. So you need to make sure you're using the latest, most secure versions of everything.
And I imagine this also applies to training your employees as well.
Oh, absolutely. Human error is still one of the biggest causes of security breaches.
Yeah, you're right.
So making sure everyone on your team knows how to spot phishing attempts, create good passwords, and follow the security policies you put in place, that's a crucial part of staying up to date.
So it's about having that human firewall as well.
Exactly. You need both the technical defenses and the human awareness.
And Michael's final point, which I think is really smart, is to test your defenses.
Yeah.
So why is it so important to take that kind of proactive approach to security?
Well, think about it. You can build all these amazing layers of security, but how do you know if they're actually working the way they should?
Good point.
And if there are any weak spots you haven't thought of, testing is how you find that out.
So how do you go about testing your security?
Well, Michael talks about penetration testing, where you basically hire ethical hackers, which are basically security professionals,
Right.
who try to attack your systems just like a real attacker would.
Wow, that's intense.
It is, but it's the best way to find out what vulnerabilities you have. And then you have vulnerability assessments,
Okay.
which are more automated. They scan your systems for known security flaws.
So it's like a checkup for your security system.
Yeah, exactly. And by doing these tests regularly, you can find and fix any weaknesses before an actual attacker finds them.
So you're not just waiting for something bad to happen before you take action.
Exactly. You're being proactive and staying one step ahead.
So to sum it all up, defense in depth isn't about trying to find that one perfect solution that will magically make you invulnerable.
It's not about that magic bullet.
Right. It's about building a security strategy that is resilient and can adapt to the changing threat landscape.
Exactly. And it's about understanding that security is an ongoing process, not just a one-time thing.
So we've talked a lot about why defense in depth is so crucial, how it makes attacks harder to pull off, how it gives you that safety net if something does go wrong, and how it helps you stay ahead of the constantly changing threats out there.
Right.
But we also looked at some practical ways to put it into practice. Implementing those multiple layers of security, staying up to date, and testing your defenses.
Absolutely.
So this brings us to our final thought for you today. You know, as you think about all of this and how Michael emphasizes constantly updating and testing your defenses, think about this. How often do you reevaluate and strengthen your own security layers?
Yeah, good question.
Whether it's for work or even just your personal devices and accounts, you know, because we're all online so much these days.
We are, and it's important to keep up with it.
It really is. That's something for all of us to think about.
Definitely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive on defense in depth.
Thanks for having me.
And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Bye.
Bye.